A city on the edge of chaos, streets erupt in fire and smoke as a wild horde storms through neighbourhoods, shattering windows, overturning vehicles and igniting fear across Britain. At the heart of this turmoil are three mysterious arrivals, their intentions shrouded in darkness, their presence igniting a wave of terror that officials are scrambling to contain. Authorities warn that what began as isolated disturbances has spiralled into an unprecedented threat, one that could destabilise entire districts within hours. Ordinary citizens watch in horror as the first clashes with police turn deadly, flashpoints igniting across multiple boroughs. Shouts, sirens and the smell of smoke fill the air as eyewitnesses report masked figures moving with alarming coordination, seemingly prepared for confrontation. The Prime Minister's office releases a statement insisting the situation is under control. Yet on the ground, emergency services are overwhelmed, unable to stem the tide of destruction. Social media erupts with videos showing protesters and rioters facing off in chaotic street battles, sending the message that the city's rule of law is being tested like never before. Panic spreads as schools lock their gates, parents clutch their children, and local hospitals brace for a surge in casualties. The three arrivals, whose identities remain partially obscured, are reported to have made chilling statements hinting at a doomsday plot, a declaration that sends shockwaves through both the public and law enforcement circles. Meanwhile, the streets tell another story. Smoke rises from abandoned cars, flames lick the edges of barricades, and the clash of metal on metal echoes through otherwise silent city blocks. Reports suggest the rioters are armed with improvised weapons, using the cover of darkness and the confusion to escalate their assault. Police units stretched thin and deployed across multiple hotspots struggle to contain the chaos. Residents barricade themselves indoors, peering out at the unfolding carnage as the city teeters on the brink of total anarchy. The Prime Minister, facing mounting pressure, insists that the situation is being monitored. Yet insiders reveal panic rooms and private security measures being activated at government offices across London. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens, teachers, shopkeepers and commuters find themselves caught between fleeing rioters and overwhelmed law enforcement, unsure who will control the streets as night falls. Every hour brings new reports: looted shops, overturned buses, shattered glass and streets littered with debris. Emergency services report dozens of injuries, some severe, as paramedics struggle to navigate the chaos. Social media platforms flood with hashtags calling for immediate action, amplifying the fear and anger across the nation. Security experts warn that if the three arrivals succeed in coordinating further attacks, the consequences could be catastrophic. Analysts speculate on their motives, while conspiracy theories flourish in online forums, escalating the tension even further. Citizens question why the authorities allowed the situation to escalate so rapidly, why intelligence warnings were ignored, and how three individuals could spark a crisis of this magnitude. As the night progresses, surveillance footage reveals coordinated movements. Vehicles abandoned in the streets, barricades constructed on major intersections, and groups of rioters converging with alarming precision. Police reinforcements arrive, but each intervention is met with organised resistance, suggesting the unrest is not spontaneous but carefully orchestrated. Meanwhile, hospitals report rising numbers of injured civilians, while fire crews struggle to contain blazes ignited in residential areas. Families huddle in darkened rooms, unsure if they will survive the night unscathed. The media broadcasts live images of the chaos, yet officials continue to insist that the city remains under tight control, a statement increasingly at odds with what the public witnesses. Analysts warn that this is not simply a protest gone wrong. The involvement of the three arrivals hints at a deliberate attempt to destabilise society, exploiting weaknesses in urban security and public response systems. As midnight approaches, eyewitnesses report smoke columns rising from multiple districts, the streets eerily quiet yet thick with tension, as though the city itself is holding its breath. The arrivals now reportedly moving in tandem with the horde. issue messages that blur reality and threat, heightening fear and confusion. Panic spreads faster than the rioters themselves as citizens share warnings on messaging apps, urging neighbours to secure homes and avoid confrontation. Social media amplifies every event in real time, spreading fear with viral efficiency and forcing officials to respond to a crisis now fuelled as much by perception as by reality. Emergency command centres operate on overdrive, coordinating police, fire and medical response, yet gaps in coverage remain evident, leaving entire neighbourhoods exposed. Schools, public transportation and critical infrastructure face disruption, creating a cascading effect that threatens to paralyse large parts of the city. Analysts warn that should the arrivals execute their plans fully, the damage could extend beyond immediate physical harm, undermining public trust and shaking the foundations of governance. Citizens report looting, targeted attacks on businesses, and intimidation tactics that suggest the rioters are emboldened, aware of the lack of immediate reprisal. The streets are no longer safe. Every alleyway, every corner seems to harbour potential danger. Ordinary life is suspended as residents navigate a city gripped by fear, uncertainty and chaos. For those trapped in the affected areas, every sound is a warning, every shadow a potential threat. The Prime Minister and law enforcement face an unprecedented dilemma: act with overwhelming force and risk further escalation, or attempt measured intervention and risk total collapse of order. As dawn approaches, preliminary assessments suggest that the unrest has spread far beyond initial projections, engulfing multiple boroughs and straining emergency resources to their limits. Analysts warn that even temporary containment may not prevent further escalation, particularly if the arrivals continue to coordinate with the wider horde. The crisis has illuminated glaring vulnerabilities in urban security, public communication and emergency response, and it raises uncomfortable questions about preparedness, intelligence and stability. Citizens watch, wait and pray as the city braces for a long, uncertain night, and the threat of further chaos looms large. By the early hours, the scale of the devastation became unmistakable. Streets, once bustling with life, now lay in ruins, littered with overturned bins, shattered glass and abandoned vehicles. Smoke plumes twisted skyward from multiple fires, reflecting the flickering orange glow that illuminated terrified faces in the darkness. Emergency services struggled to respond, hampered not only by the sheer volume of incidents, but by the unpredictability of the horde itself. Eyewitnesses describe waves of coordinated attacks, groups splitting off, moving quickly through neighbourhoods, setting vehicles ablaze, and overwhelming local police units. Citizens trapped in apartments reported hearing the screams of those forced to confront the chaos on the streets below. Meanwhile, local hospitals and clinics were inundated with casualties, many of them civilians caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Medical personnel worked tirelessly, but supplies and manpower were stretched to the breaking point, leaving the most critical victims waiting for aid in hallways. Every hour brought new revelations. The three arrivals, initially thought to be isolated instigators, had formed a command-like presence, directing the horde with alarming precision. Reports indicate that they used a combination of social media, coded messages and on-the-ground signals to coordinate movements, ensuring maximum disruption. The Prime Minister's statements of tight control rang increasingly hollow as citizens posted live videos showing chaos unchecked, with rioters moving freely across multiple districts while police struggled to maintain lines of defence. Analysts warned that the crisis was evolving into something far beyond standard riot management. What began as a volatile protest had become a full-scale challenge to civil authority, with the horde exploiting every weak point in urban infrastructure and law enforcement deployment. Transport lines ground to a halt. Trains were stopped mid-route. Buses abandoned on streets blocked by fires and debris. Power outages began to ripple across several boroughs as vandals targeted substations and communication lines. Citizens were plunged into darkness, amplifying fear and confusion. Families huddled together, unsure whether it was safer to stay indoors or attempt to flee. Emergency sirens wailed incessantly, blending with the chaos of the Horde's movements. The sounds of shattered glass and occasional distant explosions. Social media platforms became a battlefield of their own. Videos circulated showing the three arrivals issuing chilling statements, threats, and taunts, often speaking in foreign languages but subtitled by observers, declaring a mission of doomsday disruption. Their words ignited fear and anger alike, sending messages that ordinary citizens could barely process. Meanwhile, the government scrambled to contain the narrative, releasing statements promising safety and reassurances that every measure was being taken. Yet the images told a starkly different story. Neighbourhoods under siege, civilians fleeing, and a visibly overwhelmed police force. Reports from insiders hinted at confusion within command structures. Officers on the ground described being redirected repeatedly, with lines broken by the Horde before reinforcements could arrive. Tactical units deployed in one area would find themselves facing fresh waves of rioters elsewhere, highlighting the sheer scale and mobility of the threat. The financial and social impact became increasingly clear. Businesses shuttered, storefronts smashed, and deliveries delayed indefinitely. Residents reported looting that targeted both high-end establishments and essential stores alike. Panic buying surged in unaffected districts as fear of contagion, both physical and societal, spread across the city. Schools remained locked, children confined indoors for their safety, while universities cancelled lectures and staff struggled to manage students stranded on campuses. Families were cut off from basic services as transport disruption and local law enforcement diversion created gaps in city management. Inside the government, discussions of martial law surfaced but were quickly dismissed for fear of escalating tensions further. Senior officials debated deploying military units to restore order but faced the challenge of operating in urban environments with dense populations where even measured intervention could result in civilian casualties. Intelligence briefings revealed that the three arrivals had exploited every known vulnerability in city planning and security deployment. Cameras, patrol patterns, and emergency response routes were used to their advantage. Analysts warned that unless rapid containment occurred, this would not remain an isolated incident. Entire districts could fall under de facto control of the Horde within hours. Public perception, too, was shifting dramatically. Citizens questioned why a situation involving only three orchestrators and their followers had escalated to this point. Was it negligence, a lack of preparedness, or something more sinister? Protesters who had initially supported the authorities' handling of local demonstrations began to turn against them, arguing that the government's slow response was enabling chaos to spread unchecked. Fear transformed into outrage. Communities began organising independently, creating ad hoc watch groups to protect homes and streets, but these efforts were often met with overwhelming force from the Horde, further destabilising already tense neighbourhoods. Amid the turmoil, news outlets reported isolated successes, small groups of officers containing pockets of rioters temporarily, rescuing trapped civilians and extinguishing fires. These moments, however, were fleeting. For every success, reports surfaced of rioters regrouping elsewhere, leaving authorities in a constant reactive mode. Communication breakdowns compounded the issue. Cell networks were overloaded, emergency hotlines jammed, and misinformation spread rapidly, amplifying confusion and fear. Citizens reported receiving conflicting instructions, sometimes from official channels, sometimes from social media, leaving many paralysed and unable to make informed decisions. As the sun began to rise, the city bore the scars of a night spent under siege. Burned vehicles, shattered windows, debris-filled streets, and hundreds of injured citizens painted a grim picture of urban collapse. Yet despite the chaos, the three arrivals remained unapprehended, their presence a lingering threat. Analysts warned that their objectives were still unknown, heightening concern that the worst had not yet occurred. The authorities faced mounting criticism for failing to anticipate the rapid escalation, for underestimating the Horde, and for allowing a small group of arrivals to command such disproportionate influence over urban chaos. Residents questioned the adequacy of preparedness plans, the competence of leadership, and whether lessons from past crises had been ignored. Public trust eroded further as videos circulated online showing rioters breaching police barricades with impunity, overwhelming tactical units and terrorising entire neighbourhoods. The Horde's tactics appeared calculated to maximise fear, moving in unpredictable patterns, striking in waves and dispersing before reinforcements could respond. In response, social cohesion frayed. Communities became insular, mistrust spread. And even neighbours once familiar with each other eyed unfamiliar faces with suspicion. By mid-morning, reports suggested that recovery and containment efforts would take days, if not weeks. Citizens and officials alike recognised that the night's events were a warning of deeper vulnerabilities, not just a one-time disruption.